I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Hey, congratulations on Summerland.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm
just going to get rid of my face because I'm looking at myself. I'd much rather have a conversation with you. There we are. That's better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, not a problem. So, hey, congratulations on Summerland. Hey, so tell me where the original idea came from for Summerland for you.
Well, unusually for me, I usually start from source material of some sort, from either kind of uncovering a character or having an idea that I've been living with for a while. But with this, because I wrote it on a bursary for BAFTA, I was encouraged to write something entirely from scratch, and it was a bursary whereby they allowed you to start from wherever you like, and they asked us to consider what we loved in film and what we sort of felt that we would like to see more. And when I was thinking that through, I thought, what do I love? I love stories of underdogs. I love stories of people that we don't see very often on screen. I'm not really interested in writing about or watching stories of stories of sort of the privileged, successful people. I would much rather find out about someone whose life I wouldn't normally have any access to. And so Alice really came from my interest in folklore, and I love magic realism. So I always enjoy stories where you think there's just something around the edges that allows us to imagine that there might be more than what we see. And I think that that's one of the joys of cinema, is that storytelling allows us to imagine, and the cinema specifically allows us to visualize what that might look like. And so working in a visual medium, it made sense to me to say, well, rather than telling a story about something which is very much like my everyday life experience, what could this look like, and how can we put magic on screen, and how might that tale fall out? But the actual story just came from somewhere in here. I mean, it's an original story. It's not based on anything, and so I love to invent, and I also really value hope and optimism. It's always an essential core part of my work. There's lots of people who make fantastic bleak movies. I'm never going to be one of them. I feel like I always want people to leave a cinema a little bit more hopeful about life than when they arrived, and so I hope that that's partly what Summerland does.
So the folklore that you put into this film, was that completely made up? Because I started to believe it.
Yeah, it's not made up at all. And so Summerland is genuinely a notion of heaven where it's a pagan idea, and the pagans used to believe that rather than going, that when you died, your soul still existed in the world, but in a sort of layer on top of our own. And I really loved that idea. I like the idea that if someone died, and I suppose this is what I made up, but I like the idea that they could perhaps be fiddling with nature and we might notice it. So there would be a way of communicating with the dead, which wasn't ghosts, but for example, that you could notice patterns on a landscape and think, oh, who's left that for me to see? And then the other part of the folklore, which is the castle, the Fata Morgana myth, that is also real. So I did a lot of research when I decided I wanted Alice to be a folklore historian, and found that there were lots of myths about across time and place about various people having visions of islands which floated, or things that floated above the sea, the idea of mirages. I got very interested in that and found out that there is an actual physical phenomenon where that happens, and that is associated with these myths about Morgan Le Fay sort of conjuring up islands above the sea to try and send sailors to their deaths. But actually there's so many photographs of that really happening. And there's a newspaper article from the 1800s that she mentions in the script that she looks at and quotes, about how Dover Castle could be seen from Ramsgate, even though it's right round the side of the bay, because it was out floating above the water. And it's just to do with refraction and reflection. So when I found that, I thought, okay, well, that gives us our location as well. But tying together that idea of the floating castles and the idea of Summerland, they don't correlate in the world. You know, one's a religious idea and one's something different. But of course, that's where Frank comes in, and he makes her wonder whether people were seeing the same thing.
Absolutely. So how did you come to the decision of making it a period piece and war fostering?
Yeah, that entirely came from the need to have him be an evacuee. Originally it was set now, and then I realised that actually if he's going to arrive to stay with her, that's a sort of one way to make that make sense. And I didn't know when I began writing that he was Vera's child, that was something new. Or there's a spoiler alert, just in case anyone watching this hasn't seen the film yet. But yeah, that was a revelation to me as I was writing the script. So that was an interesting moment. But that's one of my favourite things about writing, is when it surprises me. When, you know, I try not to plan things too much at the very beginning, because I feel like if I can plan on 2 or 3 sides of paper a story which lasts an hour and a half, the audience will guess it. And that's a sort of very mathematical way of working. I try and be a little bit more open to what might happen as I get to know the characters' voices, because that's how I know what they're going to say. So yeah, and the other element of setting it in the war was that I felt like it helped to point up the elements of prejudice. So for example, the notion of her as an outsider, not taking part in the war effort, the notion of a woman who lives on her own and how odd that is. I think that's still terribly relevant now, but I sometimes feel like if you put something in a period, it can elevate those parallels so that we can still reflect on them, but you know, you can kind of think, well, actually not that much has changed. And of course the notion of the sort of gay element of the story as well, is could be now as easily, but I think the fact that Vera, if she wants a child, really wouldn't have had much option of doing that without marrying a man as easily, also helped to raise the stakes in that storyline a little.
Tell me about the seaside house and the challenges of filming it there. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes, yeah, it is beautiful, and we were really lucky to find it. I was really keen to make sure that we shot in an actual location, and as soon as we found that place, you know, it's kind of job done. It's such a wonderful location. It had its challenges. You know, there's somebody that lives there who was extremely accommodating, but of course, you know, when you're working in someone's house, you want to make sure that you don't break it. And it was just so open to the elements, which was why I was really keen to film there, but you also felt it. So you know, I actually stayed there with my boyfriend a couple of weeks before we started filming to really try and get the sense of what it would be like to live there. And it was quite a stormy night, and it was so elemental. And funnily enough, it wasn't the wind, it was the fact that the sea beats underneath the house onto the rocks, and it makes the house shake. And so you feel like you're at sea. I felt like I was sleeping on a boat, because every time the waves came in, you get judded. And I think there's something about the manner in which it's exposed and it's at the end of the world, which really relates to Alice's character, but also added something for us in terms of the fact I really wanted the audience nearly to be able to smell it. You know, it's a very visceral experience being there, and that was one of the great things about working with Laurie Rose, who's such a great cinematographer. I think he captured that so well.
I think so too. And tell me why Gemma was perfect to play Alice for you. I mean, she was great.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I think she's wonderful. I interestingly, I had been working with her just before this on a completely different show, on a theatre musical that I'd written that was on in the West End. She was playing Nell Gwynn, so it was a comic role, and we got to know each other and became very good friends as we were working together on that. And this is a million miles from that, but actually she had somehow got the script from somebody and read it. A producer had shared it with her, and she came to me and said, we were having dinner together, and she said, I read Summerland, I love it, and you are going to make it, aren't you? And you are going to direct it, aren't you? And I was so delighted that she enjoyed it, and immediately thought I could make this with Gemma playing Alice. And because I'd written the character a bit older originally, but I thought, well, if she loves it, then I'll make it younger. Actually, it's an even better story if she's slightly younger. But Gemma at first hadn't any notion that that's a part that she would play. She had told me she wanted to, you know, she was enthusiastic about it because she wanted to encourage me to do it and to get involved, you know, maybe as a producer, because she's always keen to back stories that she believes in. So she was really surprised at the idea that Alice would be a possibility, but she's so brilliant in it. And the thing I love about Gem is that she's such a chameleon as an actress. She's so capable, and she really can turn her hand to anything. You know, Nell was hugely comedy. Alice has a whole gamut of emotions, and this is a much more serious piece. And I'm working with her on something new now, which requires an entirely different skill set and couldn't be more different from these two. But it's so lovely when you find someone that you really enjoy working with.
Anyways, I just wanted to let you know, I saw the movie 3 times, so that's how much I actually loved it. So
no way!
Yeah, I watched it one night. I watched it back to back. First time I was like going, you know what, I have to watch this again. You know,
Are you serious?
Yeah, I did.
So, wow, you might be our biggest fan.
Well, I'm sure
that. Well, I'm really delighted by that because, like I said, it is, you know, I love telling stories, and I have told many stories in many different ways, but it is my first feature, and so, you know, there is that sort of, obviously, you know, I haven't quite gone through this exact process before as a writer director on screen, and so it's really lovely to know that that you enjoyed it. That means a huge amount to me.
Thank you for speaking with me. Thank you.
No, it's been such a pleasure, and such interesting questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.